You've probably heard about the meme of 70-20-10. It's the answer to the existential question of how successful leaders and executives grow and develop over time. The meme comes from the research at the Center for Creative Leadership in Greensboro, North Carolina. I was fortunate enough to be on the research advisory committee during the years of the Lessons of Experience study. Let me give you a little history on 70-20-10, and it's actually 70-20-10-25, and I'll explain that in a second. CCL is a research institute, and the academic researchers enjoy studying existential questions. And probably for centuries, probably originating with Socrates, I imagine, we've had the meme in society that experience is the best teacher. Oddly enough, in the late 70s, that meme had never been tested by research. It was just assumed to be true. So the center decided that what it wanted to do is to specify exactly what percent is learned through experience and where does other learning come from. So the research design was they interviewed successful and it turns out unsuccessful executives. The researchers did not know which of the two they were interviewing. And they asked the life question, where do you think you learned the skills that you use today to be successful? The researchers recorded those sessions. A different team took the recordings and coded the recordings and put them into categories. And it turns out that when executives are asked, where in life did you really learn delegation skills? Or where did you learn listening skills? Or where did you learn analytical, critical thinking? There were 16 life events that they mentioned. At the time, my partner, Mike Lombardo, who was on the research staff, and I began to teach a course called Tools for Developing Effective Executives. And one of the tools in that package was a developmental protocol of how you would go about developing successful executives and senior managers. We decided that 16 was too many. That is, it violated the keep it simple rule. And we had to cut it down somewhat. So we took the 16 things that executives mentioned and we put them into 4 categories. It turned out that the 16 fit pretty well into 4 categories. So one was I learned it from doing it, learning from experience. The second category was I learned it watching others. So I watched exemplars who were good team managers, and that's where I learned my team skills from. The third one is I learned it from classes, reading books, going to webinars, going to offsites. And then the last one is I learned it through critical life experiences or crucibles or catastrophes that I went through. Basically, very hard periods of life, either from life or work. And that's where the 25 comes from. So 1/4 of the statements that executives made said that they came from life disappointments. And there were 8 of them. And the successful executives almost always reported going through the majority of those 8. So they got fired. They had a company scandal. They had a serious illness in the family. And that they learned grit and fortitude and resilience and resourcefulness through going through those kinds of experiences. So we were left with 3 categories that are manageable. We had learning from experience, we had learning from others, and we had coursework or self-learning. When you looked at the coded material and looked at the percentages, it came out 70-20-10, remembering that 25% were hardships. So we were left with 70%. So technically, and this is calculus math, the 70-20-10 is of the remaining 75% experiences. So successful executives said, for the most part, I learned by doing. The second most powerful experience was learning from exemplars, and it turns out it's mostly learning from bosses. And then the third was I went to a course on strategy, and I learned the 5 key principles of strategy from that experience. Now, the 70-20-10 model then, or meme, is the answer to the question that I have gotten a lot over my 50-year career, is how can you accelerate the development and growth of an executive? Well, the answer is every job needs to be developmental. I call that assignmentology. That is, how do you figure out what assignments to put growing executives through? And the answer to how do you accelerate or make the growth of executives more successful is every job needs to be developmental. The principle of assignmentology is pretty straightforward. That is, people learn from jobs that require them to do something that they have not done well before. It's called the burning platform model. That is, when we get most concerned about how to put out fires, is when there's a fire on the oil platform. That's when you really learn how to put out fires. So the key is to find out the 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 skill sets or mindsets that the executive is going to need further down the road on their career track, and find job assignments that have a mix of things they do well to make it a legitimate job placement, and things they need. So if one of the things that we don't know about an executive is, are they capable of building a team? Find an assignment where one of the requirements is to build a team. What we found out when we talked to successful executives is that if they went to a workshop on team building, they've got that folder on their shelf. They didn't pay much attention to the course at the time because they weren't required to build a team. But now that they were faced with the issue of building a team from scratch, many reported that they went back to the folder that they took away from the workshop, and they paged through it to remember the 7 principles of hiring good workers, and they read the section on engaging a team. So they didn't learn at the time because it wasn't important to them. But when the task is required of a job, then it became important. Then they also thought through in their past which bosses that they've had, and they've had 10 bosses, which 3 did they think were the best team managers? And then they reflected on that and decided which 3 of those things that they needed to learn to do. So, oddly enough, this research has been duplicated 5 times, 3 times, once in Europe, once in Asia. 3M in Minneapolis redid the study from scratch with their leaders and managers. And it's come out roughly the same each time. It amuses me as one of the co-directors and co-creators of 70-20-10 that in the LinkedIn and the Facebook posts, many say that there's no research behind 70-20-10. There's a lot of research behind 70-20-10. It's hard to learn swimming from a workshop. You probably have to get in a pool to be able to do that. One of the criticisms that is amusing is somebody said it can't possibly be true because it wouldn't come out to be even numbers like 70-20-10. Well, I have to humbly admit that's true. It actually came out 79, 21, and 9. 69, 21, and 9, and we rolled it into even numbers because it would be easier to remember. The other thing you have to understand is that it's an average. That is, if you'd look at that, it depends upon the type of industry, the age of the company, what's going on. Is it a startup? Is it a fix-it? And what is the company trying to accomplish? So the 70-20-10 won't apply everywhere. In a highly technical company, the 10 would be larger because you have to learn technical knowledge probably through workshops and other self-study methods. So 70-20-10 is simply the math behind people learn best from experience, something your grandmother probably told you. It is true. And the center, oddly enough, who is in the business of adult executive education, that was not a good finding for the center because they're in the business of the 10%. So they had no conflict of interest. So it's 70-20-10. It's always been 70-20-10. And that's the answer to how good executives accelerate and grow the fastest.